Hi, hi, hi. So thanks a lot for being here with me and for coming on to share more about your journey and just being a part of Marketer's Room. So imagine that you were creating a time capsule that encapsulates your career. What would the items in that time capsule be, and what story do they tell about your journey so far?
Yeah, if I were creating a time capsule about my career, first of all, thank you, Atashi, for having me. I'm glad to be here. Uh, the first one would be a book by Bishop T.D. Jakes. It's called SOAR, as SOAR. It's a business book. The idea of the book is to teach folks who have, he's a bishop, so his audience are mostly faith people. Faith people of varying experiences who try their hands in business and for one reason or the other succeed. They fail, some succeed, some fail. So the book was supposed to address common reasons for failure amongst businesses, right? Or to put differently, it's more like how to take your business idea and make success out of it. So he draws from his own personal experience and the experience of his parents to do that. I read that book when I was about 18 or 20, thereabouts. I started the business I was 17. So as part of trying to make that business work was why I read the book. And the book introduced me to the idea of aspirational marketing, which is the kind of marketing that really resonates with me. You know, the kind of marketing that Nike them and Nike and Apple, that kind of marketing. It was that book that introduced me to it. So at the time when I ran my business, like I'm a pretty aspirational guy. I read self-improvement books for fun, right? That's how I distress. So I was already tending towards aspirational marketing initiatives in the business we ran. The problem though was I felt as though it was not on brand. By on brand, I mean in alignment. I mean, we run a food business. What does motivational and aspirational stuff have to do with a food business? Was a food retail business? I don't think I mentioned that before. So I was conflicted about whether this made sense or not. When I was reading that in that book, it gave me the validation I needed to go ahead with such kind of marketing initiatives in the business. Yeah, so that'll be the first one, Swore by Bishop C.D. Jakes. The second one, this is tough because I'm trying to choose between two books. I'm trying to choose between Anne Handley's Everybody Writes and Deep Work. Okay, and I think I'll go with Deep Work. Deep Work by Cal Newport. Why do I like Deep Work so much? First of all, I think that we've all become really addicted to distraction. That's the main argument of the book. That's one of the arguments of the book, not the main one. The main argument is that you have capacity to produce important things, and most people are losing the ability to produce valuable material because their attention is fragmented. So the deep work thesis is that if you hone your ability to focus on cognitively demanding tasks over a long period of time, then then you can create value that is hard to replicate. The reason I like the book so much is because, and first of all, Cal Newport himself is a writer, right? He geeks out about the art of writing, so we resonate on those kind of things. Second of all, I read another book that he wrote, and I really loved it. Basically, I think of Cal Newport as somebody who is like a more sophisticated, wiser version of me, like the person I want to be in say 10 years. So everything he has is an instant sell for me. So deep work, I recommend deep work for any knowledge worker. I think we're the war for attention is real, and we need to do a better job of protecting our attention. So deep work. The third material would be this would be like a yellowish scroll, yeah. Would be a yellowish scroll, one of those 70s, 1700 scrolls, right? Socrates is sending a letter across the Atlantic. So one of those scrolls, and it would have two inscriptions. The first inscription would be don't tolerate imposter syndrome. If you've been given an opportunity, chances are you're already equal to the task. Or at worst case scenario, the skills needed for that task are at the current edge of your abilities or at the edge of your current abilities. Right? So if you don't have the required skills yet, you can just learn. The second inscription would be don't be intimidated by the gap in knowledge between you and the marketers you respect. Right? Nobody's born with marketing knowledge. And marketing isn't rocket science. So all marketing skills are learnable. Your heroes, they learn their way up, and so can you. I think those are the three things.
Interesting. So essentially, two books and a scroll. that has two items on it.
Yeah,
Hmm, interesting. I think we have a bit of understanding about your career. So tell us a bit about who you are as a person and as a marketer.
I think I alluded earlier to the fact that so who am I as a marketer? Who am I as a person? I alluded earlier to the fact that I'm a self improvement nerd. I read self improvement books to distress. I'm also a movie person. I watch a lot of Christopher Nolan. He's my favorite director, but it isn't just one. I like the Avengers as well. Uh, I'm a movie person. Okay, I'm also a Christian. My faith is a big part of my life. So I think okay, I like to joke that I have a a sense of humor that's kind of like Nigeria's like NEPA electricity, right? It's on and off. I'm funny now, and then I'm not funny next moment. So I have that erratic sense of humor. I think that's about it about me. Then my marketing, I do content marketing. Yes, I mostly right now I'm a freelancer. I've been a freelancer for the length of my career. I help B2B businesses, Martech, sales, and SaaS in general. In particular, I help them produce their content assets. So usually long form, right? That's what I do. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, it does. And I also love Christopher Nolan, so
Oh,
it's nice
nice.
connecting on that. Yeah, so let's get a bit of a sense of how you work in a team. So you talked about, you are a content marketer, but I'm sure that and as content marketers and even as marketers, we work a lot in teams. And I think that one of the biggest things that we don't think about enough in general is values and the kind of values we take to work. So when you work with a team, what values do you take to work that anchor how you operate, how you create your work, and how you collaborate with your team essentially?
The first thing I'd mention is feedback. I'll say proactively seek out feedback. Many people are happy to give you feedback if you request. People are usually very skeptical of giving you feedback if they think that you may rub off on you the wrong way. In any case, I'm fanatical about feedback. So I always admonish people to proactively seek out feedback after every major project. With a new client or in a new team, I'm always asking, "How did this?" Ask a very simple question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied are you with the output of with my output? And then I also ask, is there anything you'd like me to do better? Now, one of the reasons why I feel very comfortable asking this question is because I'm very self assured, right? I don't have I, negative feedback doesn't get to me, okay? And in my mind, I'm awesome. So, but I also know that the biggest room in the world is room for improvement, right? So, I I mean, I know that compared to what we can be, what we are now is nothing. And the way to bridge the gap between where you are now and where you could possibly be is to know what gaps currently exist. You need to identify those gaps. So feedback can be very useful in identifying the most important gaps for you to close. So I always admonish that people seek out feedback. I'm always seeking out feedback, right? Always, always. Every client I've had will tell you that I'm fanatical about feedback. Second of all would be, and before I say the second thing, I'll just say that most of my work has been independent. Yeah, so I don't have plenty experience working in a team. But so the stuff I'm sharing is just based on my experience working with clients, maybe 1, 2 person teams, and volunteering in out of work situations, right? And then like maybe working with my own mentees. So the second thing I'd mention would be uh, take initiative. I've noticed that or be willing to step up, take initiative, and be willing to step up. I've noticed that like in team scenarios, sometimes people are always waiting for somebody else to instruct on what needs to be done. And because of that, a lot of time is wasted waiting. If it looks like there's no clear direction on what needs to be done, be willing to just hold the fort and say, okay, let's get something going here, right? So be willing to give direction to a team if it looks like nobody has been appointed to do so. Take initiative. People like people who take initiative. That'll be the second thing. The third thing is, of course, we talk about this all the time, is it's entered the realm of cliche at this point. Go above and beyond. Right? Don't be the person who is known to deliver excellence, or at the very least, be the person who is known for always doing their best. Your best may not be enough yet, but at least it should be clear that you did what your best. You did your best. And the fourth thing would be over communicate. Over communicate. If you're working with people, if you have like people who report to you, it's always better for them to have clarity on what your expectations are. You can't go wrong by over communicating. You may go wrong, however, by under communicating. If you're managing upwards as well, like for instance, I'm as a freelancer, I there are circumstances where, for instance, you have to maybe move your deadline forward, that kind of situation. It makes sense for you to promptly communicate the change in plans to your client. Right? Don't ever ghost your client because you are in a bad situation. Right? You're Even if you end up losing your client, you still be better off communicating with them than being unprofessional and ghosting them. So over communicate. Always be communicating. Whenever something needs to be said, say it. I think I gave four things there. Those are four critical values I can think of right now.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. That is actually very sound. Do you have a memorable experience of a work you've done that has shaped your career? A project you've done at work, or I think they're all projects. So a project you've done at work that has shaped your career so far.
Yeah, I can think of two projects that I've done in my career that really gave they helped me better understand my competencies and they shaped my approach to work. I'll mention just one. Sometime in 2023, I was supposed to work on a thought leadership piece on financial services marketing. It was a thought leadership piece. It was ghost written. So my job was to speak on the behalf, so to speak, of the person on whom I wrote for. The challenge was that I have zero experience in financial marketing, right? And all I got was a brief and the target audience. The audience were high level executives. So you're talking CFOs or at the very least heads of marketing. So I thought to myself, am I the right person to write for these folks? I'm a beginner marketer. These folks should be the one teaching me. Where am I going to get knowledge I need to write a piece that is compelling enough to be worth their time? And then as I thought about that, I realized that, I don't even know what their problem is. So when I thought about the fact that I don't know what their problem is, the next step became instantly clear. I thought if you don't know what their problem is, that's something that you can discover. You can discover what their problem is. And so I did a bit of research. I chose a few carefully selected sources and uncovered what challenges marketers in financial services companies face. Okay. Upon discovering that, it became clear what the challenge was. The challenge was that the regulations in the financial services industry makes it more difficult for marketers in those spaces to be creative with their marketing. So I did that research and I discovered what the problem was. And once I knew what the problem was, solving it became a lot easier. It was now a matter of who are the financial services companies killing it, right? Whose marketing is being talked about in the communities despite the regulations that exist. And one example instantly came to mind. The example that came to mind was Wise. The reason this example came to mind was because I already watched just a couple weeks or months before, I listened to a podcast on Lenny's podcast. He interviewed a high-ranking official in Wise, TransferWise, the payment company, and I learned there that about 70% or so of their new customers are word of mouth. Now, everybody knows if you're growing that largely on word of mouth, it's because you're doing something incredibly wrong. So that became my first. So I just went deeper into the story, and that became the thing I built my argument around. Then obviously we have a few other companies in Nigeria who are doing fantastic stuff. We have Oppress Diary, right, and we have a few others like that. So what made this project really interesting for me was how I went from being overwhelmed and wondering what how am I going to do this to delivering a piece that when it was done, my clients came back and said this was fantastic. This was I think his exact words were this article had fire insights, great work, something like that. And so became a very useful way for me to approach my writing. In fact, what I tell myself now is I don't see myself particularly as a content writer. I see myself as a content curator. This mindset shift has been really crucial for me because my job as a writer or as a producer is not to invent new knowledge, is to understand the problems that my readers face and to understand what experts are already saying about the answer. Like find out what they're saying about the answer, then bridge that together in a way that makes sense and that that they can understand and that is easy to understand, is inspired and just compelling. Now, the benefit of that reframe is that when I start a writing project and I feel like I don't know what to do, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to include in my piece to make it reader worthy. It's usually just a research problem, right? If I do more research, I understand the needs of the reader and I understand the responses that other experts are providing. I can almost always come up with a solid piece. So the time that I've wasted agonizing over, I don't think I can do this, that time is now saved because I know exactly what to do.
Very interesting experience, and the way you thought about, or the way you're thinking, because I think it's a present thing. So the way you're thinking about that. So thanks for sharing. What's something that you haven't seen someone try in marketing that you would like to see?
One thing I don't see a lot in B2B marketing is aspirational marketing. In fact, I can't think of any one company that is aspirational in their marketing. Now, you could mention examples like Apple, but I don't consider Apple B2B in this context because they have a consumer facing side. Right? But strictly B2B businesses, you don't see a lot of aspirational marketing there. And in fact, I've heard I can't quote him verbatim now, but I heard a podcast by Pep Lyer where he said he doesn't really think start with why has like room in B2B marketing. And I beg to differ. As a matter of fact, I think that like in the future, one of the ways that B2B businesses will differentiate is by having strong missions that drive their all of their initiatives. I don't think we see a lot of missional marketing in B2B, and I'd like to see that happen more. And I think we'll see more of it in the future. I think it's going to be one of the major ways they differentiate. Yeah.
How do you think that would play out? Because I'm curious, because B2B is a very, I want to say street industry, but in a sense there are barriers there are ways you need to communicate to pass across your message because you're speaking to, in most cases, execs, you're speaking to people who just really want to understand what that solution does for them. So how do you reckon aspirational marketing would play out in that space?
First of all, I'll say four things. First is that I use aspirational marketing and missional marketing, synonymously. So aspiration doesn't have to be something, doesn't have to be about like self achievement or anything, which is what Apple really pushes. It can just be a strong mission. That'll be the first thing. Second thing I'll say is I'm not sure I have all the answers just yet. I mean, I'm sure I don't have the answers just yet, right? But the third thing I'll say is I've already seen evidence of unique marketing styles in B2B. I don't know if you're familiar with the attribution tool, Oki Stack. Oki Stack is their Y Combinator company. They're really popular in the B2B space for attribution. And one of the things Oki Stack does on their LinkedIn to push their products is they sometimes would they did a rap track, for instance. They did a rap track where they talked about their tool over rap, right? Now that's not 10, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have considered that conventionally B2B, right? But they did it, it differentiated them, they gained traction. They're one of the most well known names. For instance, if you asked me, that's the only attribution tool I know, right? It's the only one I know. And it's because of their marketing genius. And that leads me to my fourth point. My fourth point is at the end of the day, and people say this a lot. I think sometimes gets exaggerated, but at the end of the day, it's humans that are buying these products, right? Now the dynamics are different because there's more humans. There's a committee that decides on how decisions are made, but it's still humans, and we cannot underestimate the fact that if you connect with an human, you can get the champions you need to penetrate the company and get and sell your product. So I think it will work, but I don't know exactly how yet.
Yeah, that's reasonable actually. Another fun part. So I would say we're getting to another interesting part of this conversation where we talk a bit about your experience as a smarketer. So what does being a smarketer mean to you?
Being a marketer means having an opportunity to connect with other smart marketers, and no pun intended there, by the way. A lot of smart marketers in the community. I get to interact with them, learn from their experiences. You know, Yeah, so it's really a good place to be, and especially when you're a freelancer like me, you don't get to have plenty peer-to-peer interactions. So having a small community of people where you can bounce ideas off each other and see what is going on in other people's professional lives has been really useful. I think it was my cousin who is also a marketer who told me first about Aisha, and I jumped on Aisha's website and I saw that Aisha provides she offers consultations, paid consultations, and I'm always looking for that kind of thing. I'm always looking to leverage people's experiences. So I made a mental note of it. If I ever need to learn more about somebody's experience, glean someone's experience, I'll just it was good to know that I was 24 hours away from having audience with a senior marketer without having to queue on an email list or anything like that. So I made a mental note of it. I think around this time was also when I started following Smarketers Hub on LinkedIn. I probably joined the Slack community as well at the time, but I'm not a very Slack person. Let me rephrase that. I'm not a Slack person. Most of my communications happen off Slack. So even though I joined the community, I never really entered it. It wasn't until after that Lagos meetup we had that I became active on the community. So everything goes back to the central point that if you have the chance to learn from other peers and you have the chance to learn from people who have more experience than you should take it. And in the community, you get both of that. You get the chance to learn from folks who are more experienced. You get the chance to bounce ideas and to see into the experiences of folks who are at your level. And you also get the privilege of sharing your understandings with folks who are, relatively early stage. It's interesting that since being there, I've connected with a couple of smart guys. We want to have like a ongoing professional relationship. You would be one of those people. I know we met before Smarketers, but we've become relatively close since then. There are a few other guys like Gigi, Gift, and names elude me now. But yeah, I think that would be the summary of what being a Smarketer makes.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And what's your favorite thing to do in marketer's room?
My favorite thing to do in marketers room is bantering with other marketers. Right? It's just um, I remember recently somebody shared a job posting, a screenshot of a job posting that was looking for an electrician plus marketer in one. So I found that really funny. So this kind of jokes come around every now and then. So just my favorite thing are bantering. Sometimes we're having serious conversations. Somebody needs help, and you're seeing how different people are approaching the same problem. Other times we're just having fun. So it's like the office gossip I never get to have because I work freelance. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I'm stealing that. The office gossip I never got to have. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And with what you know now about the value of communities, how would you advise someone? What would you say to someone who is trying to build their career through community?
If you're trying to grow your career by being in a community, the one thing I'd recommend is be present. Like there's some benefits to being in a community, even if you are under the radar. But most of the benefits comes from being present. So what this means is when you can contribute. When someone asks a question that you have a POV on, a point of view on, contribute here. And what this makes clear, obviously, is that you can only do so many communities before you spread yourself thin. So if you're trying to grow your career using communities and you know that you have to be present, you now have to carefully select the communities you'll be present on. So for instance, I belong in at least 4 communities, five, and I think about it, five. But there are only two where only one really, right, where I actively participate. And that's Marketers Hub. The other four, I'm relatively silent. Just not because I want to, but I've only got 24 hours in a day, and there's only so much I can do in that time. So you want to be present in the communities that you belong in. Understanding that means that you need to carefully select them because you can't. I mean, it's like dating. You date five people at the same time. It can be fun, but it will kill you. So yeah,
Yeah, thank you. Solid advice. And I like the analogy. You're giving really good analogies.
it came
Thank
off
you
the cuff.
so
Like
much for sharing. Sorry?
the analogy was unrehearsed.
And yeah, what's your hope for the future of your career?
Uh, you know, if you had asked me this question, what is my hope for the future of my career? If you had asked me this question December last year, I'd have told you that I intend to pivot into a growth marketing role. And that is still true. However, upon reflection, I realized that October last year, I wrote a state of report in sales, and what that did was it reconnected me with my original interest in sales. Sales has always been my thing. I'm a natural, right? I have the kind of things that trip people up. Afraid of talking to people, afraid of asking for a sale. I'm very comfortable with these kind of things. Doesn't bother me. Sales is my natural zone of strength. But there wasn't a clear entry into the world of sales when I started my marketing career. Was why I chose marketing. I had marketing fell on my laps. Sales, however, there was no clear entry path. However, I've been written in sales for about 1 year now. I've now begun to see how I can enter the world of B2B sales. So I see myself doing a mix of marketing and eventually sales going forward. I hope that I can transition fully from marketing into sales within the next 2 years. But ultimately, what I really am is a business person. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, right? So all of this is just a ploy to gather business skills, right? That would make me a successful entrepreneur. So ultimately, I just see myself starting something of my own and hopefully making a success out of that.
Interesting. We've come to the end of our conversation, but one final question is, do you want to give a shout out to any marketer, maybe someone who has been a significant impact in like your career, or anybody at all in marketing, even a stranger, I guess, that maybe you read their work, but yeah, just let me leave this to you. Would you like to give a shout out to any marketer out there?
This is really tough. I'm going to offend a few people. I think he'd be my friend Ayoyemi, who interesting is not a marketer. We started with we started writing, one naira per word content pieces together in 2019. He actually introduced me. When I say content writing fell on my lap, he was the one who dropped it on my lap. He said, "I think you can write well. So how about you make money from this?" So if I'm going to give a shout out to one person, I think he deserves that spot. He's a lawyer. He's in the UK now, and I appreciate him for sharing that opportunity with me because that's the road that led me here 4 years after.
All right, thank you so much for coming on this conversation. It's been really, really nice chatting with you and learning more about you, especially.
Thank you for having me, Atashi. It's Smarketers Hub.